I see so many founders falling into the trap of trying to build the next Chanel, the next La Roche-Posay, the next Armani. And they're constantly comparing themselves to those big, big brands that you see on TV screens and that you see everywhere, right? But this is the sure way to burn a lot of money and a lot of your time when trying to sell your product. Because the founders of these brands originally started out with a completely different mindset, right? And they were focusing on completely different things. And this is what I'm going to uncover in this video. I'm going to show you the old way, like what most of the founders do and how they're wasting time and money, and what the new way is, how you should be thinking in order to become the next Chanel or the next big, big brand. All right. So let's jump right into that. So the old way is essentially comparing yourself to these huge, huge brands, right? So what I see a lot of founders do is actually look at the ads, for example, of a Chanel, the ads of a La Mer, the ads of an Estée Lauder, and they're trying to imitate that, right? You see these high production videos that basically don't say a lot about the product, right? When you take, for example, Chanel or any other big perfume brand, you see these TV commercials where like they don't really talk about the product. It's just about like having some, half naked model and some weird, visuals, and then the 15 seconds are over, right? And they try to emulate that, but this is like this is not going to sell, right? And this is very important to understand. Like those brands here, they are at a completely different stage than you are when you're starting out with your skincare brand, with your supplement brand, with your perfume brand, whatever it is. You have to compare yourself to when they were in your position, in the position where you're at now, where nobody knew them. Like, what did they do there? Okay. So basically a lot of brands and founders, they're focusing on the branding stuff, the branding part. Obviously, you have a great product. Let's say you have a great product. Okay, that's number one. But then what do, right? Most of them, they go to trade shows, right? Which I'm not totally against it, but this is not going to be the thing that gets you to millions a month. They try to get into retail stores, and they're like doing everything, like pouring all the energy into that to get into a Whole Foods, to get into a Macy's, whatever they're called, right? Only then to realize and to see that you don't make a lot of margins doing that, and you have to sell like huge volumes so that it actually makes sense, right? So it's great to say that you're in these chains, but then in the chains, it is also like super hard to to stay there, right? One thing is to get there, the other thing is to stay there. You have to have certain volumes when it comes to sales, so that you're still relevant and you basically earn your spot, right? So this is another thing that a lot of brand owners don't think of. And yes, it's amazing if you can say that you're in a Whole Foods, but what does it actually mean when it comes to your bank account, right? Then the other thing is they invest a lot of money into PR, right? Into getting into all of these like magazines and stuff. And, it, it's not so cheap, right? Depends on the magazines, but you might be like down like 10 grand, 20 grand, only get some publications, but you don't really know if that makes you any money, right? And then after a couple of years of doing that and hustling and, basically, working like crazy, when you look at your shop, your store, right? The one that you're actually owning, right? Which is where you own your customer data, which you don't when you're in retail. And when you focus on retail, you can monetize them over time and so on and so forth. You look at your store and you're making like 10 grand, 20 grand, 30 grand, 50 grand, whatever it is, right? But this is not going to move the needle, right? And you after all these years, like investing into your product, investing into all of these things here, you're asking yourself, what did I do wrong? Why am I not growing? Why don't I have the feeling that I have the control to scale my business, to scale my brand, to making 100 grand a month, 1 million a month, or even more, right? So this is why I say, don't do that, right? Don't start out like that. Think of what are actually what's the new way? Like how would you do it instead, right? Because when you look at brands like a Chanel, for example, when you look up the story of the founder of Chanel, right, the original foundress, she started out selling hats. She started out selling hats, right? And then she got to know some actors. They wear their hats, and then she moved into clothing. I'm still not talking about perfume. I'm still not talking about like handbags, nothing like that. No big TV screens, no big publications, no nothing. Her goal was to, like, in her little boutique in Paris, is to make money, right? And to grow her income finally, right? And obviously to grow the brand. But that's like, this is what people confuse, right? They look at Chanel after 100 years of existence. You cannot compare yourself to these brands, right? You need to compare yourself to, what did she do when she was starting out in 1913 or 1912 or whatever the case was. What did she do there? You have to apply that same mindset. You cannot like try to think like these big brands. And this is something that I hear a lot, like people saying, oh no, we don't do any like discounts, we don't want to do any sales, because it hurts our brand. But you have to think, like, do you really have a brand? When you compare yourself to brands like these, do you really have a brand? And it's tough. It's very tough. But you have to be open to these kinds of thoughts, because that enables you then to really think, okay, how can we actually generate cash flow and profits so that we can get to that spot where we are in the same group or in the same conversation as these brands? Okay. So how do we do that? Very simple, honestly. It's identifying what the market wants, right? So this is research, right? Really understanding, like, in your niche, what do people like, what's out there? What does the competition do? Okay? Obviously, you want to understand what's the competition. But then you also want to understand what are the needs of the customer. Okay? Needs, pain points. Okay? And then from there, you basically look for a gap or for gaps in the market. What is something that, for example, there is a solution, people are buying this solution mostly, but they're not really happy with it, right? So they take it because it's there, but they would be open if somebody offered them a better solution. They would be open to switch, right? So this obviously, this is about product, right? But this is also about positioning of the product, right? It depends on how you position your product. So, but it all starts with just identifying, like listening. That's the point. Like, instead of having this like in some way also like arrogant attitude, which comes with all of these brands, right? Which they can afford, like they can afford to have this attitude because they've been in business for over 100 years. Okay, so they can do that. But in your position, if you're starting out and you don't have like millions of dollars on your bank account that you can spend on just creating brand awareness, your job is to listen to the market, right? That's number one. Once you've listened and you've identified, then sell the market exactly what it needs, right? So they might not know exactly, what they need. They might know what their pain point is, what they're not so happy with. So this is where our job comes in as the founder, as the main marketers of our business is, okay, how can we sell something that is actually better than what they thought they need, just to have an edge when it comes to our positioning, to our messaging. And then you sell people exactly what they want and what they need. Okay. This then generates cash flow and profits. Yes, this is our main objective as a business owner in any kind of business. I don't care which niche, I don't care, which country or whatever. If you own a business, your goal is to create cash flow and to create profits. Okay. So we cannot just negate that and lose ourselves in all of these like branding things, to get to know, to get the word out and stuff like that. This is what people talk about. But ask those people how much profit they make and how much cash flow they make in their brand. Okay. So let's not confuse that. Let's not confuse these two things. So this is our main goal. We want to increase our profits month by month by month by month. And then what we can do is to reinvest these profits into branding, right? Into getting to know, getting, just getting, how do you say, getting brand awareness. Okay. So I can afford that when I have profits, when I have a business that is generating profits. Then I take a part of these profits and I say, well, and let's invest this into, some PR, right? Or let's invest this into hiring somebody or hiring an agency that can help me, get into Whole Foods. Okay. But then you get there with momentum. You don't get there like begging for a space in their shelves, but you get there saying, hey, okay, we're making 1 million a month, right? We just want to, see if we can cooperate with you. You're still a small fish, but Whole Foods will prefer a brand like that comes with a wave, rather than a brand that is begging them on their knees to give them a little tiny space in their shelf. Think about that, right? You want to get there with power. You want to get there with with authority in a way. So and with a little hype, let's say. So that's it. You reinvest these profits into what people call branding or brand awareness. But this means we're just making what we already do, right? So our goal is to generate cash flow and profits. But with this reinvesting, we're just enabling us to to scale even more profitably, right? Because at some point you will have to go into colder audience segments. They don't know you. So this is just a part of making that easier. If people see on your page, obviously you've been listed in all of these magazines, and you're available in Whole Foods, and you're available there, right? This makes it easier to create trust, right? To generate trust, and ultimately just fuels the fire. But it all starts, like all of this new thing, the new way that I'm sharing, it all starts with full ownership. Full ownership when it comes to selling your products. Okay? This is the main thing. And this is what some people just shy away from. And it's so easy to hide behind these things and tell yourself you're doing something for your business and you're growing the brand. But you should not be focusing on growing the brand. You should be focusing on growing the profits and the cash flow of your business. Okay. And then the branding stuff comes. But this is exactly what I've identified with my own brands, right? For example, we're at close to 1 million a month now, and we haven't done any of this. We're just starting, like with, for example, doing PR. Okay, we will be starting getting into retail potentially by the end of the year, or maybe even next year, right? So our main focus was just to get this brand up to 1 million a month at least within a year, which we did now. We're very close to. But you see, like, the difference when it comes to defining your brand or your e-commerce brand, right? I'm not talking about my brand as like a Chanel, right? I know we can get to like 5 million, 10 million a month, and then we will be, considering more of these things and getting more into the branding part. Okay, so very, very important takeaway. I hope for you. And yeah, how to do that, how to own the acquisition. I have many, many other videos on my channel. Please take a look at them, understand how also other brand owners actually made that, right? Made that happen, went from basically nothing to 1 million a month, or to 300K a month, or to 500K a month, whatever, just by following this framework, right? Is really understanding your customer, creating a front end offer, finding the right creatives, finding the right funnel, and then optimizing the LTV, right? Everybody that has a great product can get there with paid ads. I'm 100% sure, because I've seen this system work so many times now, not only my own brands, but also like the 30 brands that I'm mentoring. So yeah, if you think this is interesting, if you want to stop to lose time and money with this old way and switch to the new way, then check the first link in the description. Check out all the other videos on my channel where I really dive into these topics more tactically. But yeah, I hope this was valuable to you. It was very valuable to me and to my clients, making that shift and really focusing in on what's the goal. And I think as a founder, this is really what you want, right? You want to be the next Chanel. I understand, like, that can be the vision, but please go back and research, what did these brands do in the beginning, right? They mostly started out with a little boutique selling hats or something that you didn't thought of. Okay, so yeah, hope that was valuable. Let me know in the comments, and see you on the next one. Peace.